I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is.
Now we get into 2012. On the bottom of page 149, it starts, in 2012, David graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in Digital, Video, and Media Production. After 2 years in the making, the Gray State movie trailer was released to the public on August 7th, 2012. A month after its release, David Crowley was interviewed by the Freedom Fiends talk radio show. The interview, conducted by Michael W. Dean, came out on September 15th, 2012. And see, we're coming up here on the the 10-year anniversary of that first trailer being released.
Wow, you're right. I forgot about that.
That was September. The interview was September 15th, 2012, and here we are at the end of August. The Gray State movie trailer cost David Crowley and Mitch Heil $6,000 to make.
They did an excellent job for $6,000. Even if you adjust for inflation, it's still pretty good. Still pretty fascinating.
It was a phenomenal trailer, yes.
Yeah.
Starting on page 150, it continues, that's just out of pocket through our production company, David explains to Michael Dean. Quote, that's just money spent harnessing the actors to our set and getting the props that we needed. But we spent another year in post-production doing 17-hour days. So how do you put a price tag on that, really? The story of Gray State continually evolved. It's gotten deeper, David said of the Gray State story. It's gotten very much darker. So people, when they see this, the response is, I knew they would be very, very divided. First of all, they're very supportive, like, wow, like this is a future scenario that we can face, that we are facing right now unless we wake up. Then what they want to do is they want to assign the responsibility for activism to my project and assume that that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do, is wake people up with Gray State, when in fact I can't make any such moral distinction because I'm a filmmaker, I'm an artist. What I'm going to do is explore human truths, and I can do so through pretty messed up context like the Gray State world. But how real or not real is completely irrelevant. So once again, the philosophical side of things is what David is saying. I can do this. I can put this product out there. I can't tell you what to do and how to behave and how to think and how to react, but I can provide it out there. You can draw your own conclusions. I'm just the filmmaker.
That's right. And that was the big thing where he says, I am a filmmaker. Eric Nelson could learn a lot from what David Crowley is saying here. This is what you do. This is how you make a good movie. Eric Nelson had a great chance with A Gray State, the hit piece on David Crowley. He had a great chance to make a good movie, show all sides, and let the people come to their own conclusion. It sounds like with the Gray State trailer, that's exactly what David's purpose was.
Yep. Get it out there. Wake people up. What I'm saying is, David clarified to the host, quote, people kind of expect me to tell their story, their version of the truth with Gray State, and that's not my intent. If it resonates with truth with you, that is great. If it doesn't, that's also great. But what I've been seeing is that the 3% or so who really hate Gray State, they don't hate it because it was shot poorly or that story could never work. And here's why. They hate it because it threatens them. It threatens their reality. And that just tells me that what I'm doing is close to the truth, at least because that they're threatened by it. I think that the reality that most people live in is almost like a religion. Like if you challenge a Christian or a Muslim who just grew up believing what they believe, they don't know how to defend it logically. What they're going to do is that they're going to lash out in a very knee-jerk and negative response to defend the reality, and that's just the nature of humanity, I think. So what I'm seeing is in their reaction to Gray State is either very positive or very negative. It's a very polarized argument. That's true.
Yeah. And those polarized arguments are usually what, keep things going and what keep people talking. And hopefully, it lets us do it in a very respectful way. I thought it was very interesting where David is talking about where he says if you challenge a Christian or a Muslim, which he was a Christian, his wife was a Muslim, it makes me wonder about their talks that they had about Christianity, about Islam, and obviously about all these other things too. But I'll bet you they had some very interesting, very deep talks about their Christian backgrounds and their Muslim backgrounds.
David made it very clear that he was not interested in selling the Gray State project unless it was for serious money. If a studio bought the project, David said to the host, it would just get put on a shelf or be drastically changed from its original message. So in the interest of maintaining creative control, I will not sell the project. However, if it goes nowhere and someone's offering me $200 million or something awesome like that, who knows? I got to feed the monkey. But as it stands right now, I got to get this film funded, and I will get it made for whatever budget I can get. If that means $500,000, great. If that means $25 million, like it needs, then that's great too. But this movie will get made, even if it's a long-term haul.
Some interesting stuff there because he's already talking about the 25 million here. Remember, this is 2012. This is fresh off. The trailer had just come out in August 6th or August 9th or something. So this is fresh off of that, off of the huge success of a $6,000 movie trailer that is reaching everywhere. Where people like it or whether they don't like it, we're all talking about it. At least I had a lot of friends that were showing me this. I didn't like it, but a lot of my friends did like it, and so we would talk about it. And like he says, it's a very polarizing thing here. But right here, even as early as 2012, he already understands 25 million. It's just interesting that he actually says that here.
Yeah, and this was early on, and that trailer already had generated maybe close to 1 million views already back then.
Yeah, I think so. I think now it's up to probably closer to 4 million now.
Yes.
And that doesn't include everyone who hacked it and took it and did, made their own versions of it too. So.
When Michael W. Dean asked if the eventual movie would have a happy ending, David responding by asking the host a question. What do you think? You tell me. Great answer. I would guess and hope that it probably has a triumphant ending, Dean answered. But it's the hero standing on a pile of bodies, some of them people he knew. That's pretty close, David admitted. That's pretty astute. I'm proud of you. There will be a pile of bodies. You won't know who's going to end up in that pile when you're watching it. A film has to follow convention. It has to follow the storytelling formula. Otherwise, the story doesn't work. But once you know the rules, you can break the rules, and Gray State breaks the rules in that it's not only immediately physical, it's interdimensional. It's very layered. It's spiritual at times without adhering to any sort of Western philosophy, but it's deep. It's taken me a long time to craft the story, and while it might not be a physically surface level happy ending, anyone who's paying attention will extract some real values from the ending.
So he must be talking about the 2013 script here. Definitely not the 2014 script. That one is completely different. When he's talking about this one is interdimensional and spiritual. When I hear him say this, having read the 2013 script, and kind of I was so confused by the 2013 script. But when I read him talking about it, it is very very deep, and it does leave the door open with a lot of things, where I could interpret a lot of things in the 2013 script my own way, and I think David had purposely planned it like that. But I don't know about the surface. Yeah, like he says, there will not be a physically surface level happy ending. There definitely isn't in the 2013, even the 2014, I would say. But the 2014, I would say, has more of a happy ending than the 2013 script does. But he must be talking about the 2013 script or a variation, maybe an earlier version of it.
Sure. The Gray State trailer did not put David Crowley in debt. It's all paid for. We paid cash for everything. If Gray State takes off and starts to pay the bills, that'll be sweet. Otherwise, I'd have to take a back burner while we make a living. It would have to take the back burner while we make a living. End quote. David also explained the filming process for the movie trailer. We wanted to do it for real, but a lot of it was guerrilla, unfortunately. A lot of the scenes we did, it was like it had the real scale of a real production. So a lot of them, yes, we went to the city, we got permits, we hired cops to babysit us for a few hours, and we did it for real. But a lot of stuff was just guerrilla, just because we couldn't get a hold of the city liaison who does that stuff, or they didn't know what to do. It was only a 3-second shot anyway. So there's a couple of things like that. But for by and large, it was a real production. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things there, when I think about that, is there's one scene where Danny August Mason's character is looking at this playground, and so maybe the playground footage, something like that, is something that they could have just went out there, put some kids on a playground, had Danny Mason stand off here and just film that. Those are the type of things when I think about it. But it's very creative, and the more that I learn about what they did, what they had to get permits, because when I think about permits, I get lost, and I'm like, this is why I could never be a real filmmaker, because I don't want to go through all that stuff. It is such a nightmare to do anything like that, even in a big city. And I think the Twin Cities, right? The Minneapolis is a big city. Just I don't know how comparable it is to San Francisco. I've never been there, but that is just so tough to get that. But if you have a little playground over here, and you can just get a quick film crew, let's just go out there and just film it and just shoot it. That's fascinating. And I think more people do stuff like that than have to go through the whole permits and everything. And when we're going to get to that, but when he's talking about permits and stuff like that in the Twin Cities, it seems very difficult.
Yes, continuing on, he says, quote, Minneapolis is a bitch to deal with, David continued. They want to charge you like $150 an hour, even if you're just a freelance photographer. The initial park scene we shot in guerrilla style, just real quick. But the St. Paul people, Twin Cities is Minneapolis in St. Paul. Those guys are a delight to deal with. They'll give you a cop. They'll make all the communications for you, and they'll set it all up for you, and all you got to do is send them a check at the end of the day. During the interview, David Crowley was asked if he had made any enemies as a result of the Gray State project. Quote, I do know that I've already made a lot of enemies, Crowley responded. And this was a long time ago, actually. I made enemies just by releasing little bits and talking to people about my idea for the film, long before it was even released as a trailer. And I have made no shit enemies just because they don't want to hear it. And a lot of them have been family. Not my family, but I'm talking about other actors who've spoken to their family about it, and the people don't want to hear it. And what they do is they assign, like, well, That can't be real. So it's going to be a terrible movie. So I don't want to hear anything about it. But I wonder if they thought the same thing about Toy Story. Like, hey, toys don't talk. This movie sucks. So the negative reaction has largely been not reputable. So it's been just a lot of silly banter about, I'm a Zionist pig and don't support my film. End quote.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny there. But
Yeah, but I get that, you're making a story that's pushing the bounds like this, and people say, well, it can't be real, therefore I can't believe it. And he's got a good point. Well, you obviously like Toy Story. That's not real. And how is this any different? So he makes a good point there that
yeah, and he doesn't specifically talk about like what these enemies are, who the enemies are, but the fact that you put a Masonic apron in your trailer, I mean, I really believe he's talking about, at least at some level, he's got to be talking about that, about the Masons, who probably are not very happy that they are depicted in his trailer as the enemy, as the bad guys of the Gray State trailer. To me, that's a huge thing. I think that could be why the trailer did so well too, and why it made it more polarizing than if they wouldn't have included the Mason apron. I think the story, the trailer itself, would have been just as fascinating without the Masonic apron. But it's very, very curious to me why that was put in there.
Correct. Michael Dean also asked if Crowley had ever been contacted by a government agency. Quote, if I were contacted by a government agency, David responded, I would not know about it, so I can't really answer that question. I'm sure that I have been. I'm sure that I have been. A lot of the reactions I'm getting about the trailer, they want to peg me as some kind of Zionist Jew, I guess, because my name is David. I guess that's proof enough for them. My lead actor's name is Danny Mason. Oh, you mean like Freemasons? They want to develop their own conspiracy theories. They want to say the whole film is COINTELPRO. I'm just trying to develop lists to put them on. It's all very, very silly. David also mentioned being accused of being as a Marxist.
They're calling him everything. They're calling everything here. And the whole Zionist thing, I thought that was pretty interesting too, because I have heard that too, that David was some type of a Zionist or something. So I thought that was pretty interesting there. And then being a Marxist, that's a new one. I haven't really heard too many people talk about David being a Marxist. But back then, who knows? And these could just be random comments. These could be just troll comments that he's getting.
I think so. And I think it begs the fact that he was over the target. Whereas then the name calling comes out. Not true name calling, just throwing things out there. The name calling in general. Right. And we both been there, Greg, where you start getting accused of being things. And that just means that you're over the target. Usually it's accurate when they get the names or the descriptions wrong. Things like this. Alt-right, all these things that we've been accused of being. To me, that just tells that you're over the target when they're naming you things that are not accurate. Now, asked if he's a Christian, David responded, I am, but I don't know where to draw the line between what I've been taught my whole life and what is probably more closer to the truth, if that makes sense. I've done a lot of spiritual exploration. I tend to end at the same answers, though. I love any kind of comments that David makes. I love how he puts it into words. He's very, very articulate on not to go too far and not to give just basic answers, but he just says it how it is.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he put it on record that he is a Christian, because there have been a lot of questions about that I've seen.
David also addressed the critics and negative responses to his project. Quote, a lot of people say that Gray State is just fear porn and they're not going to support it, and it's fear mongering and stuff like that. Just because Gray State is scary does not make it fear porn. end quote.
Yeah, and I had to put that in there because I was one of the people that accused him of this being fear porn.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I felt that was appropriate because he pretty much addresses that, and like you said, he's very articulate. He articulates why it's not fear porn from his view.
And then finishing up, the last is a quote from David Crowley that says, "Even though you may be killed resisting, the act of resistance on a metaphysical level has value." Great quote.
That's definitely one of my favorite quotes from him.
Now we get into 2013. So this is all, everything we had here in this chapter so far, Greg, is still 2012. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts. Now we get to 2013, and now things start solidifying here as far as narrowing down. 2013, bottom of 154, it says, after David Crowley completed a revised script of the Gray State movie on June 2nd, 2013, he asked a select group of people to review the updated version of the story. On October 23rd, 2013, the rough cut of the documentary companion piece known as Gray State: The Rise was finished and ready for a review. And once again, this is the documentary, not the movie, not the film. This is just a companion piece called The Rise. This was finished and ready for review. Exporting the rough cut now, David Crowley wrote on Twitter. So stoked. Then he goes on December 9th, 2013, Crowley added, quote, 6 months working on Gray State: The Rise. It's finally taking its final form. But holy Moses, what a shit ton of work, end quote. Goes on to say then that David, Comel, and Rania Crowley moved into their new home in Apple Valley, Minnesota on December 13th, 2013. On December 18th, 2013, David posted on Facebook that he had lost, quote, a crucial hard drive, end quote, during the move to 1051 Ramsdale Drive. The only real loss after moving to a new house last weekend was a crucial hard drive for The Rise. I guess the next few weeks will be spent salvaging everything that was lost.
That's a big one right there because we had talked about this several times where who was helping him move and how did these things go missing, right? I mean, I have hired moving companies and things like that, and I've never had the issue of things like that going missing. But to have hard drives and data like that go missing is pretty weird. I thought that was really weird, and I think this is in 2013. The trolls are surrounding him. They're getting closer. Like there's a lot of people that maybe that I don't know who helped him move again, so I can't say. But there's that to me is a very very strange. And I know that was posted in the group, and it stuck out to a lot of people in the Justice for David Crowley and Family.
That's a fair question, you know, as far as who was helping them move. Fair question.
You don't just lose a hard drive. You know, a hard drive is small, but obviously David's packing that stuff up and putting it somewhere. It's just very odd to me.
And this wasn't a USB thumb drive like we see now. These are hard drives, external hard drives, not big,
and
not
this
small, but he had so many of them that
right.
it's not going to be something that just goes missing.
Right, because in 2013, I mean, they're still kind of big now in 2022, but in 2013, they're pretty big. When I think of it, I think of a kind of one of the bigger hard drives that they had back then. The nice ones are almost like a little modem is what they look like. But yeah, you don't. It's just not. You don't easily lose those. But he was able to get past that. I just found that kind of fascinating there. And because now he's moving into this house. Remember, this is after the big 2012 buzz. So the 2012 buzz has passed. His speech at the Ron Paul Revolution in 2012 in Florida, in Tampa. Thank you. And so all of that has kind of passed, and now everybody's kind of thinking 2013. Okay, what's next? Like, okay, we have this great trailer. You have this. You have all these leeches, all these Gray State goons that are surrounding themselves with David Crowley, and they're waiting for him to make his next move. And then this hard drive goes missing. I don't know. Not saying it's all connected, but it's very strange the timing here.
Now, the top of page 155, continuing on, it says the following day the project was on the road to recovery. File recovery sucks, wrote David, but it's better than not having files to recover. This could take a few weeks, end quote. Now, December 27th, this is 2013 still, David stated the documentary film was progressing towards its future release. Finally, getting back on track with The Rise, David posted. She's been teaching me patience by making me work for the 660 missing clips that remain and crashing at least 6 times a day. End quote.
Now, I wonder if he was over exaggerating just a little bit. Crashing 6 times a day is big, but depending on what computer he had, who knows? If it's on a laptop, I could see that crashing. But 660 missing clips—that's a lot of clips to kind of go with. But you could tell he's determined. This hard drive loss is not going to stop him. He's going to keep moving on.
Now we get to 2014. 2014, it says, during an early 2014 phone conversation, Kamel told her father she was not being physically or mentally abused by David. According to what Kamel's sister Sidra told Detective Jim Gummert, financial struggles made Kamel question their marriage. After speaking with her father, Kamel decided to work on the issues between her and David. Now this is all this gets to be very new. Out of the blue, it seems we have all this hard work and dedication, and all of a sudden in 2014, there's conversations of physical and mental abuse. She says, no, that's not the case. We're having financial struggles. Well, then that could certainly be true. But it's the first we hear of any of these things.
Right. And I mean, that's what the cops do, right? They have to do that. They have to go through that to say, hey, was there any evidence, where they physically or mentally abused? It would be nice if they didn't accuse David Crowley of this crime until they had talked to some of these people that said, no, there was no physical abuse and no mental abuse. All that, like you said, all came out later by people who just want to try to make you think that David Crowley is guilty. But even anything like that wouldn't really fit that bill. But it's very strange how these things come up. These are routine things that the cops have to ask, but there's no evidence of it. But a lot of people still want to just act like there is.
Well, and it goes on to say here too in the next quote, Sidra advised me, Detective Gummert wrote, to her knowledge, there were no issues between David and Kamel, end quote. So we hear little rumblings of things, and then when you ask, they confirm to say, no, there was nothing. There were no issues.
There it is.
Goes on and says, the manuscript for Gray State was about to go through a serious revision on January 15th, 2014. Some seclusion writing for this weekend, David wrote on Facebook. For those of you who read the Gray State script, it's about to get gutted for the necessity of a clear, concise, entertaining, and effective film. For all the chewy details that are going to get cut, well, there's always the novel. So he jokes about the novel here.
Right. There's always a novel. This to me is this is more stuff. When we start looking at this, we're looking for evidence that David is planning for his future. And the list just keeps growing of how many things show that David Crowley was actively planning for the future here. Not planning to kill himself or kill his daughter. In his journal, he clearly talks about planning for his daughter's future, for her 18th birthday. Which the police had all of that stuff. That's why they could never find any actual motive, because they found everything to the contrary. That shows, no, there was, he wasn't planning on killing anybody. He was planning for his future, for his family's future. All of this stuff here shows that. So I just wanted to make sure to include that in this, that this Gray State script, whatever is taken out. And as a book reader, I would have loved to have read the actual novel of this, of the final version whenever they got to it.
But it is good that you put in there that he was going through some seclusion writing for the weekend, and that's common what David did and other artistic writers go get set aside, get secluded, and plow through a bunch of things.
Right, and then Eric Nelson's film makes it seem like that's what kind of did did him in. He was so obsessed, and the police even talk about that. He was so obsessed with this. When you go into this dark place, that these are things that are going to happen. But this is normal for anyone. I did that too when I was writing this book. I tried to seclude myself as much as possible, working a 9 to 5 job, which David was not doing, and it was very difficult for me. But to have just had the time to just focus on some of that stuff while he has a young child. He's a new
Yes.
homeowner. I mean, there's so many other variables. Getting hounded by the Gray State goons who want to live in his house, who are having their own problems, who want to actually leech off of him. This is all in 2014. This is a crazy year for him. Yeah, it's just fascinating to me. But more evidence, he's planning for his future.
It says then at the bottom of page 155, it says 5 days later, on January 20th, the story had completely changed. Quote, after 2 years of trying to extract the Gray State story, I think I finally may have done it. The story has completely changed. It's working beautifully, and the new outline was completed in only the last 3 days. With this new story, it will not be hard to attract funding. Interesting, end quote.
That must be the 2014 story, something similar to the 2014 script that we have, which I think is a very well done script, a very good story, and definitely opens it up for a novel, for a TV series, for a lot of other things, even video games and all that good stuff. But it is a pretty interesting story that we should, at some point later on, we should definitely do a deep dive into that script there. It's the 2014 script is
Sure.
definitely one of my favorite scripts.
The following day, David Crowley explained he had rediscovered the ending to Gray State. It's a strange experience finally feeling genuine love for characters I've created. The most painful part of writing the conflict for these people, who are precious to me, is that I must now torture them, punish them, and drag them through the dirt to reveal their essence of form. Yesterday morning, I'd rediscovered Gray State's ending, and the final feeling captured was of such gentle sadness I've been stuck in ever since. On January 22nd, 2014, David was still settling into his new home. Quote, spending today building 2 big fucking new desks to create a man cave mega desk, then relocating all the Bullet Exchange inventory into my basement.
Now, why is he doing that? Because at this point, Bullet Exchange is kind of done, and so he's just kind of moving everything into the basement. The man cave, the Megadesk thing here too is something that is in Eric Nelson's film too, where they show David Crowley just yelling at the screen, yelling at Alex Jones almost is what it looks like, and you can tell it's so taken out of context with with pretty much just about everything that is in Eric Nelson's film. But that is one of the big scenes that I've heard that have stood out to a lot of people, is David Crowley kind of sitting in his basement, just kind of rambling and ranting and getting angry, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, wow, that's what you guys use here? He's filming himself. He knows he's being filmed here,
Yeah.
and he's filming it for a purpose. Pretty fascinating to me.
And I don't know if he had a storage locker or something for all of the Bullet Exchange equipment, but he does say here that, and in living in that apartment, there wasn't space for all this. So maybe he was renting some space or something, and now he thought, look, I've got a house, I've got some space in the basement. I'm going to shut down that storage locker or whatever it was, I'm guessing, and bring everything home and then shut down that account to save some money. And he had a lot of inventory. He hadn't even had the garage sale yet. That doesn't take place till September, where he gets rid of a bunch of it, but he had a lot of it at this point.
That's a great point. If you just want to read the next paragraph, and then we'll go ahead and shut this one down here.
Okay. On February 2nd, 2014, David explained the plot of the fictional film Gray State. Gray State, a wounded veteran leads the insurgency against a corrupt government after his city is put under martial law. End quote.
That's a great tagline. It's a great tagline for
it
a
is.
film, right? We still haven't seen it kind of reminds me of like Red Dawn. It's kind of like the Red Dawn story or something like that. But they're put under martial law. So obviously, the difference between Red Dawn is it's Russians coming out of the sky, coming to take this city over. Whereas with this, it's more like, no, these are your local police, your local
Yeah.
authorities, the local army that are coming in to take over your city, which is a very scary scenario, I think.
Yep. Yep. It's true. Should we wrap it up there then, Greg?
That's all I got for this one, my friend.
Awesome. I look forward to the next one. It gets to, boy, this 2014 gets interesting, of course, of all the different scenarios that happen. So I look forward to the next show.
I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing